this is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I am wearing one of my fancy booktube hats, and today I think it is high time I spill the beans about what is on my Kindle. Now this is a video I've been thinking I kind of needed to make for a while. I've had my Kindle for a year now, and it's sort of a place where a lot of books kind of just go to die. I've not come up with a really good plan for integrating Kindle reading into my planned TBRs, and I don't haul the books that I put on my Kindle in my book hauls. I don't really keep track of them. Most of them are either freebies from, either some promotional free discount or for, subscribing to certain newsletters and stuff, or they are extreme discounted books that I wouldn't have picked up except that they were so steeply discounted. All of them are things I have a genuine interest in reading, or I wouldn't have put them on my Kindle, but I kind of feel like this is my backup, my rainy day hoard of things that aren't super high priority, but it's okay to hoard them because they're not taking up any space, and I didn't pay much money for any of them, and someday, if I ever need them, here they'll be. I am starting to integrate some of the things that I have on here into my Goodreads TBR, so they're at least in the queue, planning on being read, but that's a very slow process, and the main thing is that I haven't told you guys that I have any of these books. But I have them, and I've been collecting them for a year because I got my Kindle for Christmas last year. So the things on my Kindle are very poorly organized. So this is not going to be in any particularly rational order. I may go by category a bit, but I'm just going to try to touch on everything that's on here that I haven't read, and maybe tell you a bit of why it's here and why I'm interested in it. I may stumble across things where I've forgotten why it's here, and in that case I have my phone on hand with trusty Goodreads that will hopefully help me figure it out. And at the end of this, if there's anything on here that you think I absolutely must actually, pull out of the depths of the Kindle and read sometime soon, I hope you will let me know. First, though, are actually things that are the outliers, and that I actually am planning on reading them very soon, because I'm going to tell you what NetGalley arcs I have on here. All of these being things I want to read and review in a timely manner. So the NetGalley arc that I'm reading right now is Prime Meridian by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is a novella. I should be finished with it very, very soon. The next one that I'm hoping to start on right after I finish that is one that is well past its publication date, and that's because they put it back up on NetGalley for a while after it was released, and that was when I requested it, so I didn't have it until after it was published. And then I didn't know when I should read it. But I am planning on reading it this month, and that is Autonomous by Annalee Newitz. I'm thinking I can pair this in a double review with Prime Meridian because they're both science fiction. That would be a good pairing. Next I have, I think, 3 February releases. I think these are all February, so I'm going to be crunching to read these in the next couple months. But first I have Moonshine by Jasmine Gower, which I'm hoping to also at least start by the end of this month because it's an early February release. Then I have Starlings by Jo Walton, which is her short story collection. And then I have The Book of Pearl by Timotheé de Fombelle, which is a young adult novel translated from French. And I talked about all 3 of those in my anticipated 2018 SFF releases video, so if you want to learn more, I'm going to direct you in that direction. So next I have a folder of things I'm going to go through. They all sort of go together as a group, even though they don't. Not long before I got my Kindle, at the point where I knew I was getting a Kindle for Christmas, but it wasn't Christmas yet, so I didn't have it, there were some folks tweeting about the fact that Open Road Media, which is an ebook publisher, was making some of their classic retro SFF titles free for a period of time, and so I downloaded a small selection of them. I didn't go crazy. I just went for a few of them because I thought it would be cool to have some things to put on my Kindle once I got my Kindle, and these were all free. Now, more than a year later, I have not read a single one of these yet. First, I have an entire trilogy by Rue Emerson, and I did have to just look them up to figure out what order they go in. So the series is called The Tales of Nedao. The first book is To the Haunted Mountains, the second book is In the Caves of Exile, and the third book is On the Seas of Destiny. These are fantasy, and they look like they have something to do with cats. That's pretty much all I know. Next, I have a short story collection by Elizabeth Hand called Saffron and Brimstone. Elizabeth Hand being an author I have a mild interest in, and Saffron and Brimstone being a very highly rated collection of hers. Then I have another short story collection, which is Andre Norton's Moon Mirror. Andre Norton is an author I would like to like, given that she was a female science fiction author who was very influential in her time. The one book I've read by her, I wasn't a huge fan of, so I thought that maybe a short story collection would give me a broader sense of her writing and whether or not there's anything of hers that I would actually really want to read. Next, I have Reefsong by Carol Severance. I think this is a science fiction story that's inspired in part by Polynesian culture, and it has underwater stuff. Like, I think there are people living underwater on an alien planet or something. Next, I have two fairly obscure books by Nancy Springer, both of which looked really different from each other, but very interesting to me at the time. The first is Larque on the Wing. I think this is supposed to be a book that really explores gender and sexuality in a speculative context of some sort. And then the second one is Plumage. I think this is maybe a contemporary-ish fantasy with an older female protagonist. A quick look at Goodreads doesn't stir my memory as to what it was that drew me to this one, but I trust my former self. I see. It looks like it has some quirky things to do with birds in it. Like, the main character starts to see everyone's reflections as birds. Anyhow, that seems intriguing. Next, I have Cards of Grief by Jane Yolen. I don't really know anything about what this is about, except I do know that it won the Mythopoeic Fantasy Award, which is a pretty strong indicator that I'll like a thing. And then I have two short story collections by Jane Yolen. I have Dragonfield and Other Stories, as well as Sister Emily's Lightship and Other Stories. These may have some overlap between them, and I know they both have overlap with stories that I have in other collections, but they may have some stories in each of them that I don't have elsewhere and may want to read. So that's all of those. Let's talk about novels, shall we? Some of these are actually on my Goodreads TBR, so they're in my TBR queue. I'll select those first. So first we have On the Edge of Gone by Corinne Duyvis, which is a young adult science fiction that a lot of people really, really like. Then I have Infomocracy by Malka Older, which is adult science fiction about, government and information and technology, which just seems incredibly relevant. There is a second book out now. People love these books. I think I paid money for On the Edge of Gone. I don't think I paid money for Infomocracy. I think that was a freebie, like around the American election, that went so badly. I have The Grey Horse by R.A. MacAvoy. I still don't know how to pronounce her name, but this is the same author who wrote, where'd it go? Tea with the Black Dragon, which I rather liked. Except this looks really different. This looks like a Celtic, Irish fantasy. I forget who I know who read this and said it was good, but someone I know read this and said it was good, and I thought, yes, I will put that on my Kindle, and I did. It is on my TBR. I did pay money for this one. Next we have Old Man's War by John Scalzi. I have wanted to try something by John Scalzi. This wasn't necessarily what I thought I wanted to try by John Scalzi. This is military science fiction, which I'm increasingly coming to the conclusion that I'm not really that into. But it's one of those sort of more important books that I feel like I should read just to be on the same page as other people. And this was also like a promotional freebie from the publisher or something. And then I think those are all the novels that are actually on my actual TBR, and there are a few more that I haven't snuck onto that Goodreads TBR yet. Let's go through them. First, I've got something called The Midnight Sea by Kat Ross. This must have been either free or very cheap. This is, I'm pretty sure, the first book in a self-published young adult fantasy series that just looks like fun, eat it up, don't think too much about it type fantasy, and I'm always game for that if it's a quick read. And then I have Tremontaine Season 1 by many authors set in the world of Ellen Kushner's Riverside books, which I desperately want to read. I have Swords Point, it's over there. I don't want to read this until I've at least tried one of the actual novels in the universe, though. I know you can start with this, but I've had Swords Point for a really long time, so I want to read that first. But this whole fictional universe, and the books that take place in it, are something that I really want to read because they're fantasy of manners, and I really, really like that. So yes, that's something that I'm very excited for, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I did pay money for that. It was severely discounted. It was like a deal for the day, but I did pay money for that. I do not think I paid money for The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Otherwise, I do not think it would be on here, because honestly, I think there's only a 50% chance that I will ever in my life crack open the Stormlight Archive series, of which this is the first book. I'm just not into the idea of these massive epic fantasy juggernaut series to begin with. The only book of Sanderson's I've read was Warbreaker. Where is it? Here is Warbreaker. I did like it. I am planning on reading more by Sanderson. Stormlight Archive is not what I am planning on reading. There's a reason I started with the standalone. I thought this was a fun page-turner, but it's a sort of fantasy that you know, I think I really would have been into several years ago. Magic system heavy, plot driven, all of that. I think I would have loved Brandon Sanderson in college when I did not have time to read fantasy novels like this at all. Which is really too bad. But anyways, I'm not hating on Brandon Sanderson or anything. I've only read one of his books and I did enjoy it. But like, this series is gonna be forever until it's completed. And like, the last thing I want is to get to a point where I need to reread previous books in a series where each installment is this long in order to remember what's happening in time for the next one. So if I ever read the Stormlight Archive series, it's not going to be for like years down the road until more of these books are already published. If I do choose to read it though, I think I will be glad I have it on ebook because these are physically enormous and this is just going to be way more convenient. And then a few more novels. I have The Dragon's Blade, Book 1, The Reborn King by Michael R. Miller. This is self-published fantasy that a lot of booktubers reviewed and really enjoyed when it was released, and it was free for like a very brief period of time. I saw that it was free and I downloaded it at the time. I honestly can't tell you if I'll ever end up reading this. Next, I have another one that I did pay money for. I am intrigued. This is The Bookman by Lavi Tidhar. This was on sale for very cheap, and I saw it on sale for very cheap on Kindle just a little while after I passed up an opportunity to buy a used copy of this and print at a used bookstore. I thought, if I come back next week and it's still here, I'll buy it. I came back the next week, it wasn't still there. So this is an author I've heard a lot about on BookTube because of his recent science fiction book, Central Station, that I'm honestly not that interested in. This, on the other hand, I know absolutely no one who's read or reviewed this, but it looks like more my cup of tea. It is the first in a series, and it looks like a bizarre and kooky alt history that has something to do with books, and like, apparently there are automatons and giant lizards and pirates and airships. I think it's maybe steampunkish and adventure-y. Anyhow, it caught my attention as being the sort of quirky, unusual thing I might be interested in. and that's why I have it. Next, I have another book by Andre Norton. This is Witch World, which is the first in her most famous series, this Witch World series that I think has both sci-fi and fantasy elements. I did pay like 99 cents for this. It was on sale. And this being the first book in the most famous series that she's written, I thought I could do worse than to have it. And then I have a couple of much more recent acquisitions in terms of the novels, both of which have dogs in the title. That's a complete coincidence. The first is An Oath of Dogs by Wendy N. Wagner. This is a science fiction mystery that I've seen reviews that intrigued me. Again, this was at a discount, a deal, so I picked it up. And then the second one with a dog in the title is Black Dog by Rachel Newmeyer. This is possibly a self-published series. This is the first in a series. I have several of her traditionally published books that are higher priority reads for me, so I don't know when I'll get around to this, but this is definitely an author I'm interested in reading more of her work, and she made this free on Kindle for a period of time right before Christmas, so I downloaded it. This is supposed to be an urban fantasy that's the sort of thing that what I've heard said about this series is this is a werewolf series that you may still like even if you don't usually like werewolves, and that's the sort of thing I love to hear because I'm always game for something like that even though I don't usually like werewolves. And I actually don't know whether this series is adult or YA. And then the last novel that I have here was another freebie for subscribing to a newsletter thing, and that is Wintertide by Ruthana Emrys. This is a Lovecraftian thing that I've heard actually isn't that horror-ish, and the descriptions make me think I would really like it. Unfortunately, I have no desire to read actual Lovecraft, and it's a sequel to an actual Lovecraft story. If you know whether or not there's actual Lovecraft that I need to read before reading this, please tell me. I seriously want to know whether I can go into this blind or if I need to do some background reading first. On to novellas. I have some novellas. So another one of these Tor.com subscribe to our newsletter freebies was Envy of Angels by Matt Wallace. This is one of the Tor.com novellas. It's the first in a series that I would never have paid any attention to otherwise, but it actually looks like it could be, you know, quirky and funny enough that I might enjoy it. But this is a series that combines like deadly sins with food. I think it's like a contemporary urban fantasy thing, and it is supposed to be comedic. So the series is called Sin du Jour, and it combines demons and culinary madness. Okay. Other novellas, Sunbolt by Intisar Kanani. This is not yet on my Goodreads TBR, but it's actually a very high priority for me. It's not on there yet because I don't want it to wait in line. I want to find some reason to squeeze it in sooner. This is the first in her Sunbolt Chronicles. It's a novella, but the next book in the series is a full novel. I enjoyed Thorn, which was her standalone Goose Girl retelling that has actually been picked up for traditional publication. I don't know when that's happening, but it is going to be happening. I actually don't think I paid money for this. I actually think I got this as a freebie from somewhere, which I feel a little guilty about because this is an author I would happily support with actual money, a self-published author I would happily support with actual money. Then I have another self-published novella that I think I got for free. I think this is a novella. 12 Days of Fairy by W.R. Gingell? I don't know how to say that author's name. But this is also fairy tale-ish and novella and fantasy and free. That's all I know. Another fairy tale-ish fantasy novella that I have is Gilded Ashes by Rosamund Hodge. This is a Cinderella retelling that takes place in the same world as Cruel Beauty, which was a weird and interesting world. I have, I think, become gradually less enthused about Rosamund Hodge over the several years since I first read Cruel Beauty, but I am still very interested in reading this novella. I have just 3 anthologies here. I have an anthology that was free called Fantastic Creatures. I learned about this because Intisar Kanani has a story in here. This is a bunch of self-published fantasy authors' stories about mythical and magical creatures. And since it was free, I thought it would be a great way to sample a bunch of self-published authors I might be interested in. And I keep forgetting that it's here. I think this is supposed to be YA, and I think it is supposed to be clean YA, if that's something that matters to you. It's not something I particularly care about one way or the other, but that's something that I happen to know about this collection. Well, the next anthology I have here, I did pay money for. I do really want to read this. It was a deal. I got it for a severely discounted price, and that is Clockwork Phoenix 5, edited by Mike Allen. The Clockwork Phoenix anthology is an anthology of fantasy stories that's been running for a while. This is obviously the 5th installment, and this is the only one I have. Goodreads keeps recommending the books in this series to me, and I keep clicking on them and seeing that they're full of stories I want to read. Yeah. I want to read these stories. I keep forgetting that this is here. And then the last anthology I have is Ruby Slipper's Golden Tears, edited by Ellen Datlow and Terry Windling. This is a book in the Snow White Blood Red anthology series. I read the first one. I thought it was so-so, but I had to get it through interlibrary loan from my library, and I've always been sort of intending to keep going with this series, even though I had a mixed reaction to the stories of the first volume. There were enough individual stories that I was really glad I had discovered that I wanted to keep reading. I think this is the 3rd one in the series. I think I just saw on the internet there's another one in the series that's now at a discounted price. So these are books that I don't want to own in print, but they're hard enough for me to get my hands on that getting them in ebook as they go on sale in ebook form might be my best way to go with the whole anthology series. I have one more single author short story collection. This is Bone Swans by C.S.E. Cooney. This is a fantasy short story collection that I've just seen very strong reviews for that I would really like to read, and I got it at a discount. And then I think all I have left is one individual short story from Catherine M. Valenti. Where is it, though? Okay, yeah, I have The Beasts Who Fought for Fairyland Until the Very End, and further still, I think, is the end of that title. It's not showing me all the way to the end. But this is a Fairyland set short story that she wrote right in the wake of the presidential election here in the US. As a reaction to that, I want to read it once I finish the final book in the series. I only have the last book in the series still to read, and then I'm going to read the short fiction that takes place in this series. I think there's at least one other short story. And I think that's it. That's what's on my Kindle. Anyhow, let me know if there's any of that I absolutely need to prioritize. I hope you enjoyed this. It was a bit scattered, but it was fun for me to record. Anyhow, I hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.